We have a mimer from Tafshin Lamed Aleph, 1971, Shabbos Parshas Ekev, Mevorch Machodesh Elu. So it begins with the beginning of the parsha. The pasuk says, "V'hoya Ekev Tishmon." It'll be when you will listen as a mishpatim ha'ela to these laws, v'shmartem v'asisem oisam, and you will guard them or observe them, and you will do them. And in response, Hashem will guard, observe the promise and the kindness that He swore to your forefathers. Because it's known the analysis of this pasuk. Ma'u inyan gimel halashonis tishmun ushmartem v'asisem. What's the idea over here that Hashem speaks that we should, when we will do three things, you will listen, tishmun, and shmartem, you will guard or observe, and you will do. Why all these three expressions? The lechura maspik loimer tishmun vasisem. Seemingly, two of them would have been sufficient if it were said you hear and you will do. Like it says, we will do and we will listen or hear. By Nasav and Nishma, it includes everything. So the same thing, Tishmur and Vasisam, also would include everything. Why does he have to add and bring into detail, not just you will hear, but also you will guard and you will do? Also, we need to understand the order. He starts off first with you will hear, listen, and then it says you will do. Seemingly, it's the opposite of the order that says first we will do, and then we will listen or understand. Why over here in our pasuk then does it begin? The first thing it says, Tishmun, you will do, you will listen or understand. And then only at the end, after Shmartim, it says, Vasisam, you will do. Also, we need to understand why the pasuk says, Hashem will guard and observe what He swore to your forefathers, the lechura, maspik loymar shenish bastam. Seemingly sufficient to say that He swore. The kivin shenish bazai tzark l'kayim, since He swore, He has to fulfill it. What's the significance of saying and adding to this that He swore to our forefathers? As we will go on the Maimer to explain the spiritual idea of this forefathers. It says why specifically is He used the word Ekev? The simple meaning of it, the meaning of the word Ekev is if Tishmun, you will listen. Similar to what we say in the second parsha of Krishma, also in this parsha, V'hoya im shomaya tishmun, and it will be if you will listen. So the same thing at the beginning of the parsha, it says V'hoya ekev tishmun. Another way of translating the ekev is not if, but beglal, since shetishmun. Where do we find that ekev is used as since? Ekev Hashem Avram b'koili. The pasuk says, since Avram listened to my voice. But regardless of if it means if or if it means since, the expression still needs analysis. Avaf became nachat aloshen ekev davke. He specifically chose the expression, the language of ekev, instead of saying im or a different word that would say, which is a seemingly unusual word choice. So the Rebbe goes on Nois Bey's second paragraph. Yuvim beheg the Maimer Tzemach Tzedek. This will be understood by prefacing a Maimer Tzemach Tzedek. Skip the parentheses by Ratoidam. Shemevair Maimer HaMedrash ala Pasuk. He explains the statement in the Medrash on the Pasuk. It says that by Yaakov Avinu, it says Vehine Havaya Nitzov Olav. Behold, that Havaya was standing upon him, over him. But literally, it's upon him, which the Medrash is going to say that Kaviyachal Hashem supports Himself via the Tzaddik. He stands upon the Tzaddik is a support for Hashem. So he says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Harishoyim miskaimim al lekeim. The Rishoyim, the evildoers, they derive support from their idols. Shenamar, like it says, Pari choylem, Pari is dreaming. Vihine oimed al hayor. Pari sees in his dream, he's standing literally on the Nile, meaning that the Nile was supporting him. Aval tzadikim alekem, miskayim aleim, but tzadikim, their gods are being supported by them. Shenemar v'hine Havai nitzav. Behold, Havai is standing upon him. So tzadikim are the support of Hashem, whereas by Rishoyim they are supported by their idols. And to note that the Rebbe brings us in a very interesting explanation in Tanya based on this medrash. According to this, we could explain what it says in Tanya. Behold, Hashem stands upon him, over him, and he's looking at him, and he's examining his innards and his heart. Is he serving him appropriately? The expression that the Rebbe uses, it's not just a nice turn of phrase that the Alter Rebbe decides, okay, there's a pasuk where it speaks about Hashem standing over the tzaddik, so he's going to borrow this and use it. This is the terminology known as melitza. A lot of Sfarim will borrow phrases from psukim and use it, maybe not always in the same context or style, and they will adopt it and adapt it to their particular meaning. So the Alter Rebbe is not just using it in a melitza way, the Rebbe says, but rather that few words, Vihine Hashem Nitzav Olav, is a distinct and separate thing than what the next part of the meditation and contemplation that the person has to have. In addition to the contemplation, that Hashem looks at him and he examines his innards and his heart. A person needs to also contemplate that Hashem is standing upon him, meaning Kepirish HaMedrash, like the explanation of the Medrash, that their God, meaning the gods of the tzaddikim, is supported and exists aleihim, upon them. The hainu, this means shakim shakadosh baruch hu kaviyachol toli b'avodasai, that the support and the existence of Hashem, metaphorically speaking, is dependent upon a yid service. This is its own contemplation. In addition to the contemplation that Hashem is examining to see if we're doing what we're supposed to do, Hashem's very existence is upon me, is standing upon me, needs me. And the Tzemach Tzedek explains, this is similar to what the Chazal said. When Yidden are doing, at the time when Yidden are fulfilling and doing the will of Hashem, so then they are adding might to Hashem's power of strength. And the opposite, if a Yid Chas v'Sholom is not doing what they're supposed to do, it says, Tzur Yilodcha Teshi, that the rock that gave birth to you, in other words Hashem, is Teshi. What does Teshi mean? Meloshoin Tashus Koyach Kaviyachol. It's metaphorically speaking a weakening of might and power, that Kaviyachol, when Yidden do not do what they're supposed to do, so they Kaviyachol weaken Hashem. And the Tzemach Tzedek points as a note to what it says in the Alter Rebbe's Torah on Parshas Shlach, that when Moshe Rabbeinu went to daven to Hashem after the sin of the Meraglim of the spies, so he says, and now let it increase the power of Hashem. It says that Hashem came like with a complaint to Moshe, and he said, this was after the Chet HaEgel, after the sin of the golden calf. Hashem said, you should have helped me out. So because he said that you should have helped me out, in other words, in giving me, if you will, the strength to overcome the Midas Hadin and to save the Yidden. So because of that, in response to that, Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Va'ata yigdal no koyach adnai." Now the might of Hashem should increase. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, let's see the power of Hashem to overcome the Hashem's mid of severity. Even more so we find in the Chazal's drashas on the pasuk, "Behold, I am alive." Hashem told Moshe, "Hechisani b'dvarecha." Chayoni means that you made me alive. You enlivened me by your words. Like is brought down in the explanation of the one of the Gaonim called Rab Nisim Gaon. What do we see from this? We're not just that the tzaddikim, the Yidden, have the capability to add strength and assistance to Hashem, but in such a manner, Yidden and tzaddikim add to Hashem, to the very life force and vitality of Hashem, that it's Hechisani said, you enlivened me, you vitalized me. Like we said before in the explanation, that Havai is standing upon him. That the tzaddikim, their God, in other words Hashem, is his whole support, his whole existence, Kaviyach of Hashem, is upon the tzaddikim. That's why it says Nitzavolav, he's standing upon him. Hainu, this means this is something that the tzaddikim supply to the very essence of Hashem's existence. In general, this is what's brought down in Chassidus and in other svarim, that hareza inyan da avoida tzorich gavoya. It's the idea that the service that a tzaddik does is he's not doing it for his own sake, he's not doing it for his own benefit, but he's doing it entirely for Hashem. So this is what it means that Hashem is standing upon him, because the tzaddik's whole avoida is for Hashem's sake. Now he goes on, and we were talking about Avisecha. Avisecha, the others have to do with the three midas of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. And this is going to connect with this concept as well of the tzaddik's strengthening Hashem. He says in the second paragraph on the page, that the tzaddik continues in that maimer. The explanation of this matter will be understood according to what is explained, that the forefathers are the divine chariot. Again, the rider sits on the chariot supports the rider. Sha'avis, the forefathers, the only ones are called forefathers are the three of Avram, Yitzchak, Yankov. Hein Chagas, these correspond to the three midas of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. Like he says in the parentheses, Avram, Minyan, Midas HaChesed, Avram's whole idea was the midah of kindness. Like it says, Avram, the one who I love, or the one who loved me. The Yitzchak in Yon Midas HaGvura, Yitzchak's idea is the midah of severity, like Yaakov even spoke about the fear of Yitzchak. Yaakov in Yon Midas HaTiferes, Yaakov is about the midah of Tiferes, of beauty. It's an intermediary that joins and includes both kindness and severity, and beauty comes from an intermingling of many different colors of the Atzilus, of the world of Atzilus. In the root, the Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes of Atzilus, in the root, they are really, even though usually in the spheres we talk about Chachma, Bina, Das, then comes Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, and the rest of the Midas. But that is only the way they come out in a revealed way. In their source, in their root, they really come from a higher source than intellect. Kiyadua, now he brings some Kabbalah about this. The Ava Memoiches Timon Nafka, Chachma Bina, which is called father and mother, Abba Ve'ima, they come from the concealed level of intellect, which is a lower level in Kesser. V'zeir anpin, those are the midas. Ba'atika shalamayla ma'moichin achid v'talya. It comes from the level of atik, the inner level of keser. It's beyond intellect. That's where it's one and hanging from, as opposed to chachma bina comes from the concealed level of intellect. In other words, the intellect in Atzilus has to do with the intellect that's higher than Atzilus, but the emotions of Atzilus has to do with something that's way higher. And now the Rebbe is going to give an example more down to earth in a person's service of Hashem. He's going to say in the brackets, like for example, in the service of a person to Hashem, though the emotions of love and awe of Hashem, we know, are born out of intellect, through meditation, through contemplation about Hashem. So through that, we come to love Hashem and to have an awe of Hashem. For example, by Kriyashma, that the idea that we have in Kriyashma, you shall love Hashem with all your heart and with all your soul, is a result and happens through the contemplation with intellect. Despite that, the root is beyond intellect. And the Rebbe says, where do we see this idea? Specifically in the heart, there is what's called the Kabbalah, the will of the heart, which has to do also b'chol moedecha. It's a love that's with all your might. Shetoif is b'chinas ha'atzmos, the level of Rusa Doliba is such a deep-seated love and connection with Hashem that can grasp Hashem's very essence. If it was completely dependent upon intellect, there's no way that intellect will be able to cause something to be able to grasp Hashem, because even intellect cannot grasp Hashem. So surely the emotions that are a result of the intellect wouldn't be able to grasp Hashem. But in the heart, since the emotions really have a source that's higher than intellect, so the heart is the place where it's located, this will of the heart that has a connection with Hashem's very essence. So getting back to the idea of the Avis, he says, V'lachein, 3 lines in the bottom, Heima Merkava. The Avis are the Merkava, they are the chariot. The idea of a chariot is to bring and cause the person to arrive at a place that he wouldn't be able to reach on his own. To elevate the person, to raise him, to bring him to a better place. Similar to the divine chariot in the prophecy that Yecheskel saw a chariot above. The holy beasts, which those are the Malachim, that were carrying the Merkava Elyoina, the supernal chariot. There was an oxen face, a lion's face, an eagle's face, and a human face. These were all the Chayes HaKodesh that were carrying the divine chariot. They elevate, they raise up the level of Adam that's upon the throne, which is talking about a God's presence in the spheres of Atzilus, to a level of Loi Adam. And what's the purpose? And what are they gaining from it? So the level of Adam, he says, that's the level of Hashem's wisdom, Chachma of Atzilus, the first of the 10 spheres of Atzilus. But through the Merkava, through the Midos, it elevates the Chachma to a higher place. To draw down the enclothing of the Oir Ein Sof in Chachma, that Hashem's infinite being should come down in what seems to be finite of Chachma. There should be the revelation that you are wise. In other words, there's a level of wisdom, and then there's a level of you. Through us drawing down the Oir Ein Sof, we make you, the Oir Ein Sof, the one that's connected with wisdom. Because the Ein Sof on its own, if we don't do something to be able to join them together, he is not of these attributes whatsoever. He has no connection with any of the spheres. So that there should be able to be drawn down the infinite light of Hashem in Chachma. Totally b'amshochas v'alos neshamas Yisrael, dependent upon the drawing down and the elevation of neshamas Yisrael. So this is all an elaboration to explain what we said before, that tzaddikim, their God is miskayim aleihim. It is supported and is existing upon the tzaddikim. So he says 4 lines in the bottom of the paragraph, the first paragraph on the page. Valpiza, even according to this will be understood. The idea that tzaddikim, their God, exists upon them, because the tzaddikim, they are drawing down the revelation and drawing down the Sof and Atzilus. This is the additional light and the energy that we say the tzaddikim add. Like we said before, that the power of Hashem increases. This is the extra power, because only Yidden, only tzaddikim can bring down the Oid and Sof. If this is something that has to do with tzaddikim in general, Yidden in general, and more so with the Avis, because the Avis Heinein Markava, the forefathers are the chariot. Why does it say it says it specifically by Yaakov? Because Yaakov is the most chosen and the most special of all the forefathers, so he embodies this as an example and an expression of this even more than any of the other forefathers. So he continues in the second paragraph, Ois Gimel. Moisav Levardet Tzaddik continues to explain. Nitzav specifically doesn't use the word oimed, which we said before by Pari. It says Vehine Pari oimed ala Yair, but it says specifically the language of Nitzav. What's the difference in Nitzav versus oimed? Hine Nitzav oimed, the 2 words of Nitzav and oimed. Even though both of them are a language indicating standing. The word nitzav indicates an elevated and more important type of standing. It's a more chashuv standing. It's not just amida, just standing around. Nitzav is like you're standing, you're set. It's an important type of standing, and so on. Because Nitzav also indicates rulership and reign. And there's no king in Edom standing a king. So we see that Nitzav is meaning of importance, but it's still related to standing. The word Nitzav is also from the word standing. He was stood up and he was appointed to be a ruler. This is similar to what it says, that he stood higher and upon the nation. Rashi, what does it mean? What's the expression me'al, from above? Higher than the entire nation. So Amida alone doesn't necessarily mean that, but when we have it in the word Nitzav, that means an elevated type of standing. The Nitzav Melech, in a similar vein, when it says Nitzav Melech, that he's not just standing, but he's standing in a way that's above the populace. Like we find it's brought down in Sfarim in the 2 words of Aniva Anoichi, even though they mean the same thing, just like Amida and Nitzav mean the same thing, they both mean I, Sheshneim Pirush Echad Lahem, that both of them have the same meaning. Still in all Achov, the Anoichi Moira al Gedula V'goyin Ukma Anoichi Haroya Yoser Mani. The letter Chav of Anoichi indicates greatness and strength and pride, like Shmuel Hanavi said, I am the one that sees, and that's stronger than just the word ani. That's because the word ani, according to Kabbalah, has to do with the sphere of Malchus, like it says, David HaMelech said, Va'ani sfilosi. So first of all, it was David HaMelech, and also the level of tefillah has to do with malchus. So ani has to do with malchus. On the other hand, va'anoichi bekeser. Anoichi has to do with keser. So malchus is about humility. Kabbalah always says, lesson like a maklum. The crown, that's just the opposite. It's height, it's elevated. Ki ois chaf, resh tevis keser, because the letter chaf that makes the anoichi different than ani is a Rosh Tevis for the word keser. That's why the word anoichi has to do with keser. Valderch and nitzav va'imid in a similar vein, nitzav va'imid sheshneim, in Yanamida, both of them are about standing. Aval nitzav moida shamid hi begdula v'goyim v'snasus, but nitzav indicates that the standing is with greatness and pride and ascendancy. The Rebbe says now in the second paragraph from the bottom, we could say the explanation on this concerning the pasuk v'hine havaya nitzav olav sheshem havaya mitzad atzmoi shayich adayin lemedida v'agbola l'seder shtalshus. The name Yudke Vavke Hashem still has, even though it's a very high name, it's higher than all the other names of Hashem, Keilah and Elikim and Adonai and so on, but it still has a connection with the measures and boundaries of the chain descent of all the worlds. That's why it has 4 letters. The letters Yud Ke Vav Ke, and Chassidus, it explains, shows how the whole chain descent of the worlds come about. It first comes out in a point, and then it spreads out like a hay, etc., etc. So that means that even the name Yud Ke Vav Ke, as lofty as it is, it still has to do with the limitations of the world. The ilu ha'inin da havaya nitzav olav, as opposed to havaya standing strongly upon him. Hainu hakiyum va'gadlus shenasa b'shem havaya. It's the support and the growth that occurs in the name Yud Ke Vav Ke, aidei avodas b'nei Yisrael, through the avoid of the Yidden. Shepi elas hamshachim b'chinas chesed shalom hayom seder shtalshlus. It affects a drawing down. Dafke, through the Yidden, do we have not just the Shem Havaya itself, but we're drawing down higher than the name Yud Ke Vav Ke into the name Yud Ke Vav Ke. And now, since we're already Shabbos Mevorchim El, so the Rebbe is already like leading into things having to do with El's preparing for Rosh Hashanah, Atum Nitzavim Hayom. Last paragraph, Al-Pizim Mevar Gamash Kosav Atum Nitzavim Hayom. According to this, Tzemach Tzedek also explains what it says. You are standing today, Lefnei Havayim, that they are before and higher than Havayim. The Kashem Shematzinu B'chayis Amrakava. Just like we find in the beasts of the divine chariot that we said before. The Chazal say that when these malachim are carrying the divine throne, they are also raised up with the throne. So in a similar vein, the Yidden are like supporting and carrying Kaviyachal Hashem. Kach gam in Neshamas Yisrael, so too in Neshamas Yisrael, Shaydei Zeshu Yisbarach Nitzav Aleim, through the Eibishter standing upon them, having his fast and strength upon them. Azai gam heim nitzavim. So it's not just Havaya Nitzav Olav, now the Yidden as well are going to become Nitzavim. What's that mean? The idea behind this is the Kivan Shemash Kosav Atem Nitzavim Hayom Koyal Rosh Hashanah. The Chazal explained that when it says Atem Nitzavim Hayom, it's referring to Hayom Din Rabbah. It's the great day of judgment. Is the day that Atem Nitzavim. That's why we read Atem Nitzavim before Rosh Hashanah. Sheboy Poilim Bnei Yisrael Inyan Tamkuni Aleichem. And that day, on the day of Rosh Hashanah, Yidden are affecting and causing what Hashem wanted us to do, to make me a king over you, which means Shekasher Imataik the Keser. This is connected with the power and might of the crown. So we are making the powerful crown of Hashem. And therefore, to be able to do so for Hashem, so the Yidden also have to tap into this. So the Yidden themselves have to be in a state, in a situation of being powerful and mighty as well. I just lost my place for a second. That's the idea that they are standing fast and strong. That the word nitzav, like we said, shows on a very strong type of standing. This indicates on the standing with an upraised stature. Similar to where it says that Hashem promises that He's going to lead us standing upright. It's supposed to say a mem, not a pei. It means with an upright stature, standing tall. It doesn't mean literally in the physical body he's standing, in a very haughty manner. Shari Amra Chazal said, that whoever goes with this upraised stature, it's as if he's pushing the legs of the Shekhinah. Similar to what the Chazal said, anyone that has in himself arrogance, so Hashem says, I cannot live with him. So the same thing, someone that has a very arrogant type of stature, so then he is pushing away the legs of the Shekhinah. Ella, after the parentheses, the Rebbe continues, Hakavani l'skifas kaima shel Knesset Yisrael mekayr neshamas. When it means that the Yidden are atem nitzavim, it means to the upright stature of the Knesset Yisrael, which is the source of all neshamas, where all the neshamas are gathered together. That's what means Knesset Yisrael. Just like the upright stature above. Like we said before, it's a drawing down at the level of the crown. Nitzav Melech, it's a kingship. So to the upright stature in the source of all neshamas Yisrael, in the ingathering of all the neshamas. That's a result of the self-sacrifice that Yidden have, that comes from a level of a will that's beyond reason. So essentially, the Rebbe says that on Rosh Hashanah we accomplish and we make Hashem be Nitzav Melech. We make Him into a king. We draw down from the level of Keser by using our own level of Keser, our own level of will, beyond reason and knowledge, and having a devotion to Hashem in a way of self-sacrifice. Ois Daled, second paragraph on the page. The idea that says Havai Nitzav Olav by Yaakov. Why does it say specifically by Yaakov? Because he's the most chosen of all the forefathers. And all the forefathers are considered the divine chariot, like we learned before. Nimshach gam cholechet miYisrael. It's not just the forefathers have this. This comes down to every single Yid. Like all matters of the forefathers, that it's considered that it's an inheritance from our forefathers. So whatever they received and whatever levels they attained, they also give it over to us by way of inheritance. Yet, even though we inherit this level of being a Merkava to Hashem and Havai Nitzav Olav, and Hashem stands upon us and we support Hashem, etc. And this is all an inherited thing. It's not in a way of bread of shame, that we are not supposed to earn it. There also has to be the idea of service and work. In such a way that doing our work, we effect a drawing down from above in a way of an inspiration from above, until inspiration from above that's totally beyond the inspiration down here below. This is a famous rule that the Rebbe always says. Even though there's a level of Isrus D'Leila and inspiration from above that comes from such a high level, that it's impossible that we can draw it down through our inspiration down here. But that itself needs to have a perfect place to reside in. So our job is not that we're going to be able to draw it down, because that's impossible. But we can make an inviting place that will be welcoming, and therefore Hashem will choose to bring this inspiration down here. And concerning our service of Hashem itself, it's insufficient. A general service, has to be a specific and detailed service. Like it's explained in Kuntus Havoid of the Rebbe Rashab, B'chol Protein Yon Machshav Dibra Ma'isa. We have to work with all the detailed matters of thought, speech, and deed. Specifically, in such a manner do we fulfill the intention of the creation. The purpose of creation was both to work it and to guard it, which is what Adam Rishon was told in Gan Eden. Even when the world was perfect, there was still a need to work it and guard it. Though at the beginning of creation the world was perfect, still in all, even though the world was created perfect and complete, we still had to work it and guard it to make for Hashem a home down there below. B'dugmas hadira, similar to a home in our physical world. Shaban nimtzum izgala hadar b'dira b'chalatz musay. That when there is a home by a human being over here in a person's own home, as opposed to when he's a guest, he finds himself and he's revealed with his entire being over there. V'gam kishehu arum b'li levushim, even when he is undressed without any garments. V'hainu shizgalus haseichel amidus yachol gam michutz la'adira. The person's intellect and emotions can become revealed. Doesn't have to be specifically in the home, because that's not the person's essence. Mashenkin is galus ha'etzem ibadira davka, as opposed to the revelation of the essence that's specifically in the home. So therefore, this is what Hashem wants through our avodah, to bring down His essence down here, that it should be the very essence of Hashem should be here. That's what it means to have a home for Hashem. Anything else would not be considered a home. So now we're going to get back to the question we asked before. What's the meaning at the beginning of the Maimer of the three things? Tishmon, V'shmartem, V'asisam, you shall hear, and you shall guard, and you shall do. This is what it says. You shall hear, and you shall guard, and you shall do. This is a specific avodah of all the three matters. The machshava is Tishmon. Thought is the level of speech. It's a level of thoughts is the level of hearing, because hearing also has to do with understanding, the mind. Like one of the explanations in Nishma means to understand, so that has to do with machshava. Dibur has to do with shmartim. It says shomer, that has to do with Mishnah, the repetition of the Torah, the speech. That's the level of shmartim. Umaisa, and action, is vasisam, is doing. So you need to have all three things, all the particular avodas. That's why he brings it down over here. Machshava, dibur, maisa. These are all necessary to be able to draw down that level of the avos that upon them Hashem is supported. Through that comes down the level that's totally beyond the chain order of descent. This is what it means. Hashem will observe and guard for you the promise and the kindness that He swore. These are matters that are beyond reason, understanding, like the Rebbe always explains, how a covenant is something that's beyond understanding, and this also has to do with what He promised your forefathers, because it wasn't, in other words, Hashem wouldn't have to fulfill something because of a promise if we earned it. Earning something, that's logical. But to just do it for us, even though we haven't earned it, that's beyond logic. And that has to do with Hayr and Seder Shtalshus. And the power for this, like we said before, is from the forefathers. That's why He says that He swore to your forefathers. The Avos are the emotional attributes of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. Its root is from a level that's beyond intellect. The Zabatik, Vitalia, Kanalsiv Beis, like we said before, Zeir Ampin, the Midas of Atzilus, is joined and hanging in the level of Atik. So because it has such a high source, it can the Yid can draw down from this amazing source in his promise that Hashem keeps to us. Third paragraph on the page. Why does it use the word Ekev? We asked, of all the words that I could have used at the beginning of this parsha. In Ekev Humaloshan Akvayim. Ekev is in the word heels. The Hainu Beikvis, the Mashiach, we're talking about the heels of Mashiach's times, meaning the time just before Mashiach is coming. Then when Mashiach, before Mashiach comes, there's many concealments and coverings and tests and challenges. For example, the many scoffers, it's very hard to handle all those that are scoffing and making fun of Yiddishkeit. To such a degree is our generation faces such difficult challenges. Even Moshe Rabbeinu was impressed from the manner of the service of this generation. Like it's known, the explanation where it says, and Moshe was the most humble person from all people upon the face of the earth, that he saw all generations. And he was humble, and Moshe is a person of truth. When he has humility, it's not just a show. It's brought down that the main humility that Moshe felt was when he saw the generation of the heels of Mashiach. Regardless of all the concealments, coverings, and tests, still in all the generation before the coming of Mashiach, the Tishmon, they do their service in a way of you will listen, meaning thought, and you will observe, which means in speech, and you will do them, which is in action. By days, final paragraph, through this becomes fulfilled the promise that's in the continuation of the psukim. He will love you, he will bless you, he will increase you, he will bless your offspring. And this is similar to what it says, if you will go in my statutes, in such a way that Hashem is requesting and begging us. Chazal say, the word im is a word begging. So when it says in Parshas B'chkoisai, im b'chkoisai telechu, Hashem is begging us, please go in my statutes. But over here, it doesn't say im. Rather, here it's in a way, an expression of a promise. That in the end of days you will surely listen, because the word Ekev over here hints at the end of days, just like the heels, the end of the body. So the Hashem is telling us, V'hoya Ekev, it'll be the time of the end of days before Mashiach comes, for sure Tishmon. It's not an if, it's a definite. Azai, then the result will be like we have in Parshas B'chkoisai, I will give you the rains in its time, like the Rebbe always explains the Pirush, that the Baal Shem Tov, that it doesn't just mean the rains, but Gishmechem from the word Gashmias, that you'll have all the Gashmias, material things that you need. V'chol brachas shebehem parsha, and all the brachas that's in the continuation of the Parsha, ad va'ilach eschem kamias, until where it says in Parshas B'chkoisai, I will lead you going upright.